It began quietly, almost invisibly, in the sterile halls of the Lewis A. Johnson Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Clarksburg, West Virginia. An elderly veteran, already frail and worn down by age and illness, drifted into the night under the watchful care of the staff. But then his heart faltered unexpectedly. The monitors sounded their alarms, doctors rushed in, tried to revive him, but he was gone. For the hospital, it was a sad but not entirely shocking moment. Patients of his age and condition passed frequently. But what no one knew was that his death was not the hand of time finally claiming him, it was deliberate. In the small hours of the night, someone had slipped a fatal dose of insulin into his body, ensuring he would never wake again. This was in 2017, the first known victim of Reta Mays, a woman who was not a doctor, not even a registered nurse, but a nursing assistant, a position of trust that she twisted into a tool of murder. Welcome to CrimeScope USA. Before we get into the video, do smash that like and subscribe button to help the channel. Also, don't forget to ring that notification bell so as not to miss any new videos from us. Reta Mays wasn't what most people would imagine when they thought of a serial killer. She wasn't hardened or outwardly violent. She was a middle-aged woman from West Virginia, a mother, someone who blended easily into the background. To her colleagues, she was a quiet worker, a face among many in the night shift. But beneath that unassuming exterior, something dark and festering had taken hold. Between 2017 and 2018, she began injecting vulnerable, elderly veterans with unnecessary insulin, pushing their blood sugar to catastrophic lows and watching them fade away in their hospital beds. The victims were men who had survived wars, served their country, and now entrusted their final years to the care of the Veteran Affairs. They came in weak, but not terminal. Their conditions were manageable. They had families expecting them to come home. But instead, they died suddenly, without warning or life-threatening illnesses. Later investigations would prove that these deaths followed a chilling pattern, and that Reta Mays was at the center of them all. To understand how she could reach this point, it helps to know who she was. Born in 1975, Reta Mae Crumpley lived a relatively unremarkable life in West Virginia. She married, raised children, and worked a series of jobs, from corrections officer to caregiver. There was no early record of violence, no dramatic spiral into crime, but there were signs of instability. Those who knew her described her as moody, struggling with personal issues, and often dissatisfied with her place in life. When she joined the VA hospital as a nursing assistant, she gained something she had never had before: power over life and death, and she abused it. Her method was disturbingly simple. Insulin is a hormone essential for regulating blood sugar, life-saving for diabetics, but potentially deadly for those who really don't need it, especially in high doses. Too much can plunge a person into hypoglycemia, seizures, coma, then, inevitably, death. Insulin was readily available in the hospital, and patients receiving injections was nothing unusual. Mays began administering it to patients who had no medical reason for it. They slipped into sudden, sharp declines, baffling doctors and leaving families stunned. The deaths looked natural at first glance. Elderly veterans, already sick but stable, suddenly started failing. But when it kept happening, questions began to rise. The victims included men like Felix Kirk McDermott, an 82-year-old Army veteran. His sudden death in April 2018 shocked his family. They had expected him to recover. They buried him without answers, never knowing he had been injected with insulin he didn't need. Another, George Nelson Shaw Sr., a 81-year-old veteran, collapsed in the summer of 2018 under the same mysterious circumstances.
In total, investigators believe Reta Mays murdered 7 men in this way, with an 8th surviving her attempt. Each case followed the same pattern: sudden, unexplained hypoglycemia in patients who were not diabetic, occurring during her shifts. So why did she do it? That is the question that haunts both investigators and families. During her trial, Mays never gave a full explanation. She admitted to the crimes but offered no detailed motive. Prosecutors suggested it was about control, a twisted sense of power. Others speculated that she was overwhelmed by the suffering of her patients and began deciding who should live and who should die, a kind of mercy-killing rationale. But there was no mercy in what she did. These were not terminal patients gasping in pain. These were men who had hope of recovery, who were robbed of years they could have had. The court would ultimately conclude that her actions were cold-blooded murders, not misguided compassion. The turning point came in June 2018, when doctors at the VA began noticing irregularities. Too many patients were crashing from unexplained hypoglycemia. An internal review was launched, and soon the FBI became involved. Bodies were exhumed, toxicology tests performed, and insulin levels were found far beyond natural limits. The truth was coming to light, and all paths led back to the same woman, Reta Mays. In July 2020, Reta Mays was charged with 7 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of assault with intent to commit murder. In court, she admitted what she had done. She sat quietly as the details were read, sometimes shaking her head, sometimes crying, but never explaining why. Families of the victims testified, grieving not only the deaths, but the betrayal. Their fathers and grandfathers had survived combat, only to die in a hospital bed at the hands of someone they trusted. At her sentencing in May 2021, Judge Thomas Klee delivered words that underscored the gravity of her crimes. He called her actions the worst case he had ever handled, describing them as heinous, atrocious, cruel, and a betrayal of her duties. He noted that her victims were some of the most vulnerable in society, elderly veterans who deserved care and respect, not betrayal. The families listened as she was sentenced to 7 consecutive life terms, plus an additional 20 years. There would be no chance of parole, no chance of freedom. She would die behind bars. In the end, Reta Mays stands as one of the most chilling examples of betrayal in modern American medical history. She wasn't a shadowy figure lurking in dark alleys. She was a caregiver, someone entrusted with healing, who instead chose to kill. And she did it not in moments of rage, but quietly, methodically, night after night. Her story forces us to confront unsettling questions about trust, oversight, and the fragility of life in places meant to protect it. Her first victim died unnoticed, his death folded into the ordinary tragedies of aging and illness. By the time anyone realized the truth, 7 men were gone. Men who had fought for their country, survived battles, endured hardships, only to be silenced by a woman whose name they barely knew. Reta Mays, the night shift nursing assistant, will forever be remembered as the woman who turned a hospital ward into a place of silent, unseen death.